I think at that time Indian radio was very let's change things types. So if I was coming to work and if I spotted something that I did not like, I could host a show on that about a pothole or the traffic or everything. You know, like what does that mean when you say you don't look Indian? And it gets my goat when it is said as if it were a compliment. But you don't look Indian. The first thing that somebody will point out in you is your accent.
Yeah.
You know, the first brush with racism happens thanks to your accent. That's when people figure out, oh, this is a person from there.
Yeah.
And it's just such a sad thing that they see accents are not the sexiest accents around the world considered.
Yeah.
Like, you know, oh, unless you speak in a certain way, it's funny to me. But you still have that image of 1970s in mind where you are talking about cows and all of that. Of course, they're a part of the social fabric of our country. Like kangaroos are well accepted if they're in Australia, but cows are somehow a problem. Like, why? Cows are not cool enough. Like, you know, you look, when you look at it that way, you feel it's so silly.
Yeah. Hello and welcome back to another episode of What's Brown Got to Do With It. So today I'm really excited because I have my friend Mohit on the show. Hi Mohit.
Hi Shadia.
How's it going?
I'm very happy to be here. You know why?
Why?
I wanted to take, for the longest time, I wanted to take credit for this podcast.
Oh, okay.
I have a feeling because
Yeah.
the day you decided the name, you sort of floated the idea of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And then you said, this is the name. How does it sound? And I said yes. Now, I don't know if you made a final decision thanks to my suggestion, but I think I have a little something to do with this. So I will unnecessarily take credit of your podcast.
You can, but in all honesty, my sister
Yes.
thought, I mean, this was almost called 50 Shadiyas of Brown. But it's not that kind of show.
It's not that kind of
It's
podcast.
not that kind of show, right? So we decided, well, my sister thought of 50. But yeah, I remember when I sat with you and, you know, I was floating like, how do I go about doing this? So let's introduce you properly because obviously I've just introduced you as Mohit, but as many people might know you more is RJ Mohit from Karak FM, which is a very prominent, obviously, radio station here in the Middle East. So how long have you been doing this here?
This is my 11th year running.
Oh, wow.
I'm a radio veteran now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right?
I didn't even know it was on for that long.
I have been.
But have you been with Karak the whole time?
No, so Karak used to be, until 2017 or 18 we were Radio Mirchi. That's how I'd moved here. But then we rebranded to Karak FM and it's already been 5 years to that. Wow, time flies in the UAE, we know that.
Yeah.
But it's just...
I remember Radio Mirchi. But isn't Radio Mirchi still there?
Yeah, then they came back with as another station. And yeah, we were the same team though and we just rebranded.
That's amazing. But okay, so let's talk about how you got into this whole like industry in the media, because you obviously started in India, right?
Yeah.
So how did that start for you?
So I was studying to be a news anchor because this was the time 2004-5ish when the likes of Barkha Dutt and these names were very popular in India. So I wanted to be one of those and bring about a change. And Rang De Basanti had just released, so we're like, you know, I can change this country and all that. So that's why I was studying mass communication and journalism. And one fine day, we just happened to see a flyer in the university saying, if you like to talk, then come to us. We're launching a radio station. I did not know much about how things work. I just thought they like put in a CD and play songs and all of that. So there were like 50 people in my batch. All 50 of us thought we could talk. So all of us went together. And to our surprise, there were some 1,000 people there just not knowing what to do. So they had us talk and sent us back home. I thought... an interview never happened. We never got a chance. And then they called us back and they said, you know what, we like you. You're hired. And it was a big deal because they launched us with a major show, right?
Oh, wow.
So there's a band called Euphoria.
Okay,
So they came in to bring us on the stage and it was a whole thing.
What radio station was it?
It was called My FM.
Okay.
Yeah. And so overnight we became a big deal in the university because radio at that time was also up and coming in tier 2 cities. Yeah. So at that time, like when we had come in, it was just Bombay and Delhi, but then eventually I'm from Indore.
Yeah.
So tier 2 cities came in and we were like stars, you know. In the university, our teachers would wait to meet up with us. People want to make friends with us. Nobody ragged us because we were celebrities. So it was great. That's why it started by fluke. And I got in. I did not know how radio works. They told us just start talking about things you like. And it turned out they thought I was good at it. That's how it started. But
you've got a very prominent voice.
Yeah. This is my radio voice. This is how I talk. And then I switch off and I'm like, this is how I usually talk.
Yeah. No, but it's quite, I mean, I've heard you off the radio, so it's quite similar.
Yeah.
But you know, with that came like this huge, as you mentioned, like a celebrity status, right? Like it was a big deal to be on the radio. And
yeah, like if you would go out in public, there would be bouncers who would like walk around us and be like, what's happening? Like, wants to meet me? But there were people. But there was the prime time of radio in the country. And then that led me to move to Bombay because I thought, like, I was a big fish in a small pond in Indore for 3 years. I'd done well.
Course,
so I was like, let's go to Bombay and do something big. So I ended up moving there. I did radio there. And you know how it happens? I firmly believe that, like, Bombay spots you, gives you opportunities, and you grow, especially in media. So one fine day, somebody heard my voice and said, would you like to do a voiceover for our channel? So I started doing, brought to you by Surf Excel. And then that led to the lady who ran the channel saw me and said, hey, you know, you look all right. Would you like to host a show for us? I was like, yeah, why not? I did that, my first celebrity interview. Shah Rukh Khan.
No way!
Yeah. Don too. I still remember.
Oh my God. How was that?
I have not been more nervous in my life.
Yeah.
Because I thought the camera is going to be on him and I'll just talk. And I had experience of that on radio. But they said, no, you're going to be in the frame with Shah Rukh Khan. And you know, you become very aware of your limbs when you're on camera.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where to put your hands. And then there's Shah Rukh Khan sitting in front of you. Oh my God. It went, so he could not have been nicer. He was just so sweet. And he sort of realized it was my first show. So he like put his hand on my shoulder and he said, don't worry, we'll make a good show.
Oh.
And he gave me very open-ended answers that led me to ask more questions. It was wonderful.
That's so nice. Yeah. Okay, can you say like who's been your worst?
Well, I did not particularly enjoy interviewing Katrina Kaif.
Interesting.
She wasn't rude or anything, but I just thought she was very, very limited. Like if I asked her a question in 5 words, her answers were made up of those 5 words.
Right.
Yeah. She could have been so much more fun.
Yeah.
But after you interview Shah Rukh Khan, I think there is no scope for liking anyone more because he's just so media savvy. And then just so Amitabh Bachchan was a big deal.
Oh wow.
Aishwarya Rai, all of those big names. Yeah, it was a great experience. But I was somewhere missing radio.
Right.
They always say, and those who are watching who have been in radio will know that, you know, radio becomes your first love if you've been in radio. It's such a fun job.
Yeah.
You know, knowing that I'm sitting in a room by myself, talking to a mic and to myself, but it's being heard by an entire city or country, is such a good feeling. So I was looking at getting back onto radio. One fine day again, I just got a text from a friend saying, hey, would you like to move to Dubai? There's a new radio station. They're looking for people. I was like, yeah, why not? So that's how I ended up moving to Dubai and then to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, were your family okay with like your choice of profession and everything?
Yeah, they were delighted because family members would walk up to them and say, oh, we saw Mohit met so-and-so. I became a star on my family chat group when I met Sridevi.
Oh.
Yeah. My parents like happily circulated those pictures. They were like, look, he just met. And then I went to the 26th of Jan, India's Republic Day parade as UAE's delegation car part. So it was just, so they have been impressed with what I've been doing. They have bragging rights because of that.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So they've loved
Fun
it.
fact, I met Sridevi once. I didn't recognize her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she looks really different.
Yeah, she does.
I actually recognized Boney. I did not recognize her. And it was like, everyone was just going up to her. And I was like, who is she? And then I realized, I was so, you know, when they said like, don't meet, you know, your idol or anything.
Yeah.
I was really disappointed.
Yeah,
I was so upset. Like, oh my
imagine.
God. Like, IRL is very different.
If you see them outside there, the bubble, right?
Yeah.
So if you meet them, if they're promoting a film, then you see the star because there's the clothes and the makeup and everything.
Yeah.
But you see them outside, you're right.
I mean, listen, those of you who have seen me on a Sunday morning in my pajamas, I barely brushed my hair. Or if you saw me through COVID, my co-workers will know this, the
All
COVID
of us,
look. Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me, like, when you came here, like, how different was that for you? Because you came from like a place where you were so recognized and there was a lot of like fame and celebrity status that came with that. But then, you know, how was it in comparison over here?
Well, they did the same here actually, you know. So when there was a lot of confidence in us because of what we were doing in India. So when they brought us in, there was a lot of media coverage, and we did like we walked for fashion designers and stuff because these are new radio people, but they'll also do some fashion. So we did all of that. So it was great coming in because we were brought in with the same pomp and show, so to say. But I think media is different here compared to how it works in India. I think at that time, Indian radio was very let's change things types. So if I was coming to work and if I spotted something that I did not like, I could host a show on that about a pothole or the traffic or everything. But then I felt, because those problems do not exist in the country as much, it was more about just the joy of living in the UAE amongst the expats, the Desi community, so to say. So we've just been enjoying that side of life, where you like the standard of living, the opportunities, and the cleanliness and the safety and everything that comes into the UAE. So it's very different, and of course it's much smaller, but it's very relaxed also. It's so much fun.
I mean, I can imagine that, but doesn't it ever get frustrating? Like, isn't there times when you do want to say stuff, or do you find like the audience is very limited here? And then do you think like a Desi radio station takes a back seat when it comes to, being at the forefront of media? So do you think like, mainstream radios such as like Radio 1 or Virgin, like they get far more coverage? Yeah. And I know they have a different audience, but they also have a very diverse audience. So do you ever think about that?
So I never thought language would be limiting when I was in India, because everything was happening in Hindi and English. But then when you move out and that is not a language spoken by majority, then English takes over. Yeah. And that's when you would feel, because I'm losing on a major chunk of audience, because it's not a primarily English radio or an English channel. Like I could speak in English a lot on my show, but if I do, there are also people who say, but tum itni English kyun bolte ho? Thodi Hindi bhi bolo, thodi Urdu bhi bolo. Because you're a Bollywood radio station, and it comes naturally to me to speak in Hindi. So that ways, yes. Second, I think there are two kinds of Desi audiences in the country, and I'm sure you'd agree with this. Like two kinds of Desi people, tell me. There's one who are still very connected to their roots, back to their countries, India, Pakistan, wherever they are from. And then there's another kind of Desi who've just become so... they're just a part of the UAE now that they do not want to do much with where they come from.
Oh yeah, oh my God. This is what's brown got to do with it. Like the premise of this. Yeah, absolutely.
Like where now people, if I go back, I have complained about, there's no valet parking here. The doors do not open themselves. All of those things. And this just, I wasn't aware I was doing it. But this has happened. Yeah. And a majority of our listenership is also that. Yeah. UAE is now such a part of their lives, and they've been living. They do not want to hear about troubles. Yeah. They don't want to hear about problems. They just want to be happy about the fact that they're in UAE and just enjoy life like that. Yeah. On a day-to-day basis, I'm sure, because we are on a podcast talking about what's brown got to do with it, there are things that happen that you do want to talk about as a brown person, but there are limitations under which you work with a media network, so you're not able to. That's why you go to podcasts like this, and then you talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny because I've had like journalists actually reach out to me saying that they really want to talk about diversity in media or the lack of. But we are kind of restricted and constrained to what we can talk about. But back to your point about the two types of Desis. I feel like the other type of Desi, the ones that are so disconnected, do they even listen to Desi radio stations in secret? Yes.
Yes. Those kind of people, I've made memes on this on my Instagram where I've said it's before 12 o'clock when I'll complain if the DJ so much as plays a Bollywood number. Yeah. And post 12 o'clock, I'm like, chunari. Like, I want that and I'll dance on that. I've seen it multiple times. I know it. Yeah.
They're the Lamborghini type.
All that. Your AP Dillon and everybody has to play it because we enjoy all of that. But I think it's unfortunate. I think especially for the newest generation that's here, they want to, I feel, sort of do away with their brownness so that they feel like they belong. Yeah. Which is just, oh boy, we could talk about it so much. Yeah. But I think that is one of the reasons why there is a little bit of a disadvantage for a Hindi radio station or a Desi radio station, because your own people somehow feel somebody who speaks in English is much cooler. Because the conditioning around is like that.
Well, this is it. I was going to say, I think it's very much about, the way that Desis or South Asians are perceived in certain areas, right? So when you come from a place where the majority or we are the biggest demographic in most places. And so when you see that most like Desis here are like, like laborers or taxi drivers, and then people need to, I feel that people find the need to really disassociate themselves from that. So to prove that I'm completely like more on this level than on this level, I have to be a certain way. So I will speak English, and I will only, you know, I won't listen to like Desi music, or I won't be in touch with my roots.
Which is a shame, because imagine the range of the kind of work that we can do.
Well, this
you know, you can build roads and streets, you can live in those apartments, you can have the biggest businesses. All of that is being done by Desis.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that one feels, but I don't want to connect with this kind of Desi. I want to connect with that kind of Desi.
Well, I always say we've helped shape the cultural fabric of the world.
Absolutely.
We really, really have. Yeah. Like, you know, we're everywhere, but we've done something. I mean, you know, in my parents, for example, or their generation, and they all moved to the UK, and there's lots of like my friends and their families that I know have been really, you know, integral part of shaping the economy. And you know, they were doing jobs that people didn't want to do. They helped build houses and build the country, and you know, so then when something like Brexit happened, it was just really sad, like, to see that you would get people that think in a way that no, they will still just see you as you know, you're not welcome in this country, but you're not welcome in a country that you helped build. Like, who else was doing it?
Wow.
There was nobody else to do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why one feels that, you know, I need to disassociate from this side of me and mingle, because like we were saying, they're just on a daily, there are so many microaggressions, these micro insults, and you don't want to face them. So you're like, let me just play down my Indianness or my Pakistaniness or your Desiness, basically, just to sort of mingle, just to belong. And in the past 5 years, I think I fought with that when I had just come in.
Yeah.
Because, there was the party scene and the whole thing because of the job that you had. And I felt people were doing that. Yeah. And I also thought, let me just be more global. I didn't look at it as I was disassociating with my roots. I just thought, I'm being more global.
Right.
You know, I'm opening up to more cultures. I'm listening to more English music or watching more Hollywood.
Yeah.
But what I actually was doing was just doing away from the fact that at the end of it, I'm Indian.
Yeah.
Cut to, in the past 5 years or so, the way I've started owning it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy. Like, I will wear it on my sleeve and head that I'm Indian.
Same.
Because, or Desi for that matter, because look at, like we said, look at the things that we're doing. Look at what we achieve despite of every sort of hurdle that comes to. Because as a Desi, I've felt, Shari, especially in this part of the world, where there's a clear demarcation between passports, right? Yeah. And also skin color so much. I feel when people say, I broke the glass ceiling and I did this, I think as a brown person, you break that glass ceiling every day. And then you feel, now I've done it. But then again, you brought in the same situation. We have to break that ceiling.
Well, this is it. I think this is, for me, it's very different, right? In a sense to you, because I was born and raised in England. So I've been raised in a very different kind of environment. And so my own identity crisis just comes from a different place. Because I've always been made to feel different. So I feel like, you know, with Indians, like, you know, you're Indian, and Pakistanis know they're Pakistanis. But, you know, for American Desis or British, you know, Desis, it's really different, because you're like, you know, where am I? And so you go through life just trying to figure out your own identity. I'm not necessarily accepted in India as Indian, or in Pakistan as Pakistani. So, like, what am I? And then, like, I come here, and then, you know, and I've mentioned this in a previous podcast with my sister, but it's like, where are you really from? And, you know, that infamous question. And it really got me thinking, because back to your point, I think it really resonated with me that I really own it now. Like, I'm really proud. Like, I can actually assimilate into any community, and I can be one of you. And, you know, one doesn't make me better than the other. But I feel like it's all part of me. It's all part of my own identity. So owning it is really important.
Very important.
But you said something about microaggressions. I want to know your most memorable or favorite microaggression.
How much time do we have? You know, so until I was in India, I did not know what racism was. By definition, of course. But never experienced it. you're with your people, so to say,
Yeah.
and it never happens. When you travel, you probably never noticed, at least
Yeah.
I didn't. And then you move, and suddenly so many things happen where sometimes you don't even realize that there was racism,
Yeah.
or somebody was being snarky
Yeah.
because of where you come from. But I think, like, I call it a micro insult, which happens to me all the time, which happens to people that I work with all the time, where they look at you and say, "Oh, but you don't look Indian." Like, and the way it used to boil my blood.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean when you say you don't look Indian? And it gets my goat when it is said as if it were a compliment. Oh, but you don't look Indian. This has happened to me in bars, in clubs, right from there to events, big places, big companies, smart people, educated people, well, but you don't look in. Very recently, I was a speaker at a tech conference. I'm one of the speakers sharing stage with like some really cool people. And the MC says to me, oh, but you don't look in. You're so put together, you don't look in. And she thought she was
double.
joking. Yeah, double.
That's a macro.
That's a macro. Yeah. And she thought she was just joking with me. And then she's like, no, I didn't mean it.
No, she probably thought she was complimenting you.
Yeah, she did. And earlier I used to correct people. Like, I would take my time to educate them. Like, you know what, this was not cool. But now I'm like, you know what? I'm doing so much in my day. I have a lot to accomplish. I'm not going to waste my breath on
Choose your battles.
Educating illiteracy. Like, this is 2024. It's unacceptable, but it does not fall upon me to educate you.
So mine's the opposite.
Yeah.
I get, where are you from? And I'll say like, yeah, I'm from England, but your face doesn't look like it's from England.
Oh my God.
So it's the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
They may as well just say, oh, but you're not white.
Yeah.
Yeah, just say that.
Just exactly. It's like, well, have you ever been to England? Because, I can tell you, especially London, we all look like this. It's so diverse.
Yeah.
Or I had one that was a really good one. So once I was buying something and there was a guy behind me. And there was a time, there was this massive wedding had taken place in Burj Khalifa.
Okay.
It was an Indian businessman, and I think he had hired out like the whole of Burj Khalifa. It hit the papers. It was really big. And so this guy just randomly in the shopping queue says to me, how do you Indians get so rich? Do you sell spices?
Wow.
I was like,
Wow, rude. So, when we talk about how brown people anywhere outside of their brown areas have to downplay their brownness or their race because of how the society is, because corporates will also want you to speak in a certain way. Your accent, for example, the first thing that somebody will point out in you is your accent.
yeah.
The first brush with racism happens thanks to your accent. That's when people figure out, oh, this is person from there.
Yeah.
And it's just such a sad thing that they see accents are not the sexiest accents around the world, considered so.
Yeah.
Like, oh, unless you speak in a certain way, it's funny to me.
Yeah.
So you feel, oh, but then now I need to stop pronouncing my D's so much and my T's so much, and I'll not say I want water, I'll say I want water. Stuff like that.
Before you know it, you sound American.
Yes, but you have nothing to do with America.
Yeah.
So, but that's why I never blame people to do that because how else do you survive every day?
But again, where does that come from, right? Like it comes from this whole like colonized mind where growing up, or it was always that white privilege is the best privilege, and so if you look white, if you speak white, if you act like a white person, then you will assimilate into a society that will accept you more than, if you're, again, colorism, for example.
Very much. We would have shared experiences of racism, but the level of those experiences will be so different.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, somebody pointed this out to me. They said, you don't, like, we're both brown, but you will never face the kind of racism or the exclusion that I would face because I'm a darker skinned brown guy.
Yeah.
And you are sometimes white passing if your beard is lighter. If you're sometimes Arab passing, so you would fit there.
Yeah.
But you won't face what I face.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just, so look at the fight, which is on a daily.
But I see it, like with some of my friends, if I'm out and, we can all look desi, but the minute I start speaking, I'm just taken more seriously because my accent is very different. Although half the time they don't expect it to be that way.
Yeah.
but when I start speaking, they're like, oh, they'll take me seriously. But I've seen them dismiss my friends, which really annoys me.
Yeah, that's how it is.
And the other thing, they, you know, mock the head shaking.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? I love the head shaking. I'm like, even if you're mocking me, I'm fine because and they can't even do it well. I say, if you want to mock it, at least do it right. You can't do this or something. You did. This is how you do it.
I'm not gonna lie. There was a time I swear I came back from India and I found myself doing this all the time. And I was like, oh my god, stop it.
You remember that scene in English to English where she's trying to get through the metro and she does and he also goes okay.
Exactly.
I mean, these are such endearing things, right? If we're made to feel that these things are not fun and somebody can joke about this, imagine how this is ingrained as a child in you then. Like, I can imagine for you as a brown person growing up in the UK, your natural mannerisms must have been funny to other people. And then you thought, oh, this is not how it should be. That is how it begins when you start feeling, oh, I'm just not up to the mark compared to others. So what do? Let me dress like them. Let me talk like them. And then you do away with the one thing that makes you who you are, is your brownness, your race, your culture and all of that. I remember how, you know, working in media, we say, oh, somebody says I've broken the glass ceiling and then I've done well. I feel as a media person especially, I have to do that every time I'm at an event. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was MC for this huge corporate, fantastic event, lovely team. But after it was done, the girl who got me on it, who got in touch with me through Instagram, she said, you know what, thank you so much. You were so good. You proved people wrong. And and she said, my reputation was riding on this.
What?
And I was like, what do you mean? We're having a good time. She was like, no, you know, people were like, oh, but will he be able to, you know, let's look at a Western MC maybe. I mean, basically, they just said somebody who speaks with that accent. So I also feel that when you do something as a brown person, you're not just having to prove it to yourself that you can do it. You're having to prove it to everybody in the room to sort of justify your space there. You know, that I'm here because I can. And I'm sure have you felt that you're also sort of representing the entire brown community when you're doing something? You feel like, oh, if I do it bad, people will sort of dismiss, saying, oh, but these people can't do it.
I mean, all the time. I always feel like in a corporate setting, I've always felt that you have to prove yourself time and time again. So you prove yourself once and you think, okay, you know, that's great. But then you're finding yourself like, that's not enough. So you're having to prove it to something else or to somebody else. And so that level of testing never actually goes. Never. But I do wonder, is that, you know, that feeling, is it from us, from within, that we have to keep proving ourselves, or do people want us to prove ourselves to them? Because I wonder how much of it is just conditioning.
Oh, a lot of it, I think. You're absolutely right. I think especially in my 20s, because I moved here in my mid-20s, at that time it was all in my head. You know, I have to justify because, like I said, I was aware of the things that will make me stand out, but not for good reasons. You know, if you talk about the head shake or the accent or my love for Bollywood, which Bollywood is so cool. I love Bollywood.
I love Bollywood.
Right? And if you say, oh, but it's so cheesy, and it's because we are as people.
Cheese.
Have you been to our weddings? We do all of that, right? So, and it is escapism. It's cinema. They, of course, ham it. So those were the things I thought will work at my disadvantage. So I would try and always do so much more just to stand out and say, no, I'm not one of those guys that you may think will not be able to do it. But then after having done it for so long, where now they come up to you and say, would you please do it for us? I feel still there are people in the room who will feel, oh, so it's not... A very basic example of a white TV host and a brown TV host. It's like you said, I think the belief that the white person will know more, will be an expert, and the advice that he or she are giving holds so much more importance than the brown person. Like a waiter walking up to your white colleague and asking for you know, stuff, your order. These are all microaggressions that you come across, and then your brain sort of starts working like that.
Oh, I know people that I mean, when I moved here, it was like 13 years ago. I remember I met this man. It was an old man, and he was telling me that how he had retired, he had moved to Spain, and he was working there. But he was telling me that there was a time when he was working for a company, and he was only hired because he was white and he spoke English. And he said, I even told them, but I don't know anything about this role. I have no experience. And they were like, you don't need to. You just need to come to board meetings and speak in English.
Wow.
And I was like, and they paid me so much money for it that I was able to retire early, and then he opened his own business.
Wow.
But that's a privilege.
That's 100%. And you come across that privilege, and then you're like, but I'm having to fight for it. Yeah. And one gets it only because of their skin color. Yeah. And then I think in my 20s it would get to me, but I think as I've grown older, and also I think that is what resonates so much about your podcast with me when you say, what's brown got to do with it? Like, you know, I'm sure this will come up. I've listened to your podcast. That is your final question, so I'll keep it for that later. But it just works in my advantage, is what I'm saying. I think if we start teaching even our younger kids, you know, to sort of use their brownness in their favor and own it instead of, because this is 2024, it is our time.
But this is the thing. There were no words for this. There were no labels. There were no... there was no such thing as a microaggression, macroaggression. We couldn't even say racism. Imagine saying white privilege like 15, 20 years ago. It was unheard of. You weren't allowed to. These things were like, oh my God, how can you say that? I remember the terminology coconut, you know? You weren't allowed to use that.
Wow.
Now people are just using it freely and stuff. So it's liberating in a sense for this generation, because the new generation, they can relate to it and they can identify with all these things. But for us, it's a bit different because we have to, you know, it's kind of trauma packing, where we have to figure out our traumas, deal with them, and then move on from them. But the generation that is now, they're kind of just growing up with it, so they know how to handle it. It's a very different generation.
And I think there's also a lot of sensitivity now amongst this generation about race compared to, say, ours. Yeah. And that is why we work with those kind of people, we hang out with those kind of people. So our experience has been so. Yeah. And everywhere, right? I think right from a blue-collared worker to a white-collared, I'm sure every brown person can point out so many times when they have been made to feel a certain way. Yeah. Or
you'd be surprised. Yeah. I mean, I believe that. I agree with you. But I have, you know, interviewed I've had so many people on the podcast that when we've spoken about them, like, no, it was never an issue. I don't believe that it was never an issue, because I feel like it would have been an issue somewhere.
100%.
Whether you accept it as that or where you moved on from it, that's different. But it would definitely have been an issue somewhere.
I think that is coping mechanism, where you say it just doesn't happen. Let me just believe that it... And I think also that is a part of the bubble that we live in the UAE, where you're like, everything is great, including the fact that if somebody says anything, I don't care. I have a great job, a great house, all of that. I don't care if somebody says anything. Yeah. And I think somewhere... also mentioning that there's been racism makes people feel less than. They don't want to say that somebody was racist to me. Yeah. So they will not mention it, because I refuse to believe that you haven't had experiences. Different, subtle, pseudo, whatever you say, it will not be in your face so many times. I mean, I would say you only feel it in your face when the second time that I went to the US, they did that extra...
Oh, please.
Frisking.
It's called the brown queue.
Yeah.
Okay, I was, remember I was in the US one time and they said, this is the normal queue and this is the random queue. And you look at the random queue and you're like, please, it's the brown queue. It is literally, what's brown got to do with it? Could have been smack bang in the middle of that. So.
But I tell myself, it happened to Shah Rukh Khan, right? Like, I said, if it can happen to him, it can happen to me. It's all right.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I go. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talking of Shah Rukh Khan. Yeah. So let's talk about can we talk about dating in the Middle East? Yeah. And how have you faced, like, I don't know, any of those microaggressions when it comes to, like, dating here?
Well, yeah, the regular one, like I said, the one is, but you don't look Indian. And also... I think what gets my goat is usually the prejudice that comes with it, you know. Like, look at us now. Look at the things that our people are doing, the development that's happening in our countries. But you still have that image of 1970s in mind, where you are talking about cows and all of that. Of course, they're a part of the social fabric of our country. Like, kangaroos are well accepted if they're in Australia, but cows are somehow a problem. Like, why? Cows are not cool enough. You know, you when you look at it that way, you feel it's so silly. Yeah. And
actually, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So so what do you? Oh wow, that's a great job. things like those, which people, so it's sort of they don't believe. I've come across some people who would just not believe. And I've also seen sometimes the tone of the conversation change the moment you tell them where you're from.
Yeah.
Because when they're looking at you, they're guessing.
Yeah.
And more often than not, in my case, they've imagined some exotic Mediterranean look person. So they would say, oh, I'm talking to this Mediterranean. And then you say, I'm from India. And they're like, oh, okay. So you've felt the tone change sometimes. You know, I mean, you can't, what do you do about it? You're like, I just say, man, you're lost. If that's your feeling, then it's your loss. It's just, what else do you do?
I mean, it is your loss if you're any of them.
Yeah.
Because,
right?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Oh, God.
You need to date Indians.
Right. Once you go brown, every other color lets you down. That's your promo.
I love that.
So those kind of things happen. I also feel that with girls and guys, experiences are so different when it comes to dating here. I think brown girls are looking at dating non-brown guys.
Interesting.
Again, I think that's a matter of prejudice. Oh, because he's white, he might have a better job. He'll be more open-minded, and all of that. Or if it's a brown guy, he'll be a mama's boy. He'll probably have a bank job, a 9 to 5 and all of that.
Yeah.
And for guys, I think it's the opposite. You are looking at dating how do I put it nicely?
You don't. Just
No, I mean, dating a white girl for a brown guy is an experience, and you get bragging rights.
Right.
Yeah. Let's be completely honest. That's how it is. So you're trying it just for that. I mean, if I walk into a club with a white girl, my brown friends are going to die.
Yeah.
So that's
so interesting. I didn't know that.
Absolutely. And then eventually you're coming back to, but you know what? Who am I going to settle with? Who are my parents going to approve?
Right.
So it happens. It is true. So the dating scene for brown people is so weird here.
See, my experience is a bit different.
Yeah.
Because I feel like before I came here, I mean, before my ex-husband, I probably would only be with a desi guy. But after I've come here, I feel like I'm more open to diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not for any reason other than just, I don't know.
All my brown female friends, they've said, no, I'm no Indian, sorry, no Pakistani.
My nani always said to me before I got married, she said, किसी गोरे से शादी करो, उसके लिए सैंडविच बनाओगी, thank you बोलेगा. And that's it, right? And then my ex-husband, he was from England, he was a desi, and my mum used to say to me, I swear this boy was born in Pakistan, there is no way he's from here. And he wanted like a 3-course meal and stuff.
Wow.
He was really into his food and stuff. My nani used to say to me, मैंने बोला था गोरे से शादी करती.
Sandwich अभी खुश हो जाएगा, brown biryani में भी problems निकालेगा.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then I have a friend who did marry a white guy, and he wanted fresh roti every day. So what do you do?
That's what we're all people at the end of the day. You cannot say how a person is going to behave on the basis of their race.
Yeah.
Some cultural things will come in, yes.
Yeah.
But I think all of that also is part of the growing up experience. You go through that pool, and then you realize, no, it all boils down to a person, irrespective of where they're from, what they look like, all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we also have to fight prejudices all the time. Especially, I think, with brown guys, the prejudice, like, the mama's boy, he'll be closed-minded. I'm not. My friends are not. Disrespectful to women, honge, and all of that. But why? Why would you assume that about us?
Well, I feel like, we can talk about this all day, every day, and I think we probably do.
Yeah.
But, as you know, the premise of the show is what's brown got to do with it? And you rightly said it maybe towards the beginning. The question now is, what's brown got to do with it for you?
It is a tough question. I tune into your pod. By the way, congratulations on it.
Oh,
Thank you for bringing brown voices from the region and around the world at the forefront, and you've got people from such a vast variety of backgrounds, and they have such good things to say, and the things that you share about your life. It is a joy to listen to them.
Oh my God, my people aren't ready. You're not ready for my actual life. If my life was on Netflix, it would be on season 6 by now.
Listen, we're popular right now. I can't wait to be on the next season of
So the Shadia show.
We should go on the other show, the Seema Auntie show. Indian
Indian
matchmaking.
matchmaker. Oh my god, I meant.
Beta adjust karo thoda.
Please.
But coming back to the question, it's a very interesting question because I would have said so many different things if I was in my 20s. But I think it's got to do with resilience. It's got to do with that we've spoken about conditioning. I think it conditions you to be so good that eventually you become a top performer. I think let me frame it again. Like for example, it has conditioned me so much that I have to prove myself every day, being brown, that now when I walk into a room, I walk with a head full of confidence because I know what I bring to the table because of how many times I've had to prove myself. So that resilience leads to confidence. And I think it is my brownness that got me here. Had I been somebody else, I think I would have gotten complacent thanks to my privilege. And I would not have been as confident, or at least I would have faked the confidence like guys do. But I think my brownness has made me who I am today, where I walk into a room, I know what I can do, I know I will add value to everything that I'm doing, and I know that I will not be the one who will be overlooked because of what I can do.
Well, we love you and your brownness, and we love everything that you bring to the room and the radio and, on my way to work in the morning.
But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we're on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Mohit.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.